What is biology? So the word biology is made up of two words. There's bio, let me change the to time Romans. Yes, where is it now? Time is to. Oh, there you are. Okay. What is biology? Biology is made up of two words. There's bio as well as logy. That is what biology is made up of. So from the biochemistry that we talked about the other day and the branches of chemistry, what did I say bio means? If you remember, what did I say? What bio means? What does it mean?
It's to study.
Bio means life.
Yes.
Logy is what means study. Yeah, so logy is what means to study. Therefore, the complete word biology will be defined as maybe we can say the branch of science that involves the study of life. But this life that is studied is the life within the living organisms. Because the organisms are in two types, though we haven't yet looked at that. There are those that are called living organisms and those that are called non-living organisms. So non-living organisms do not have life. As a result, the organisms that are studied under biology are those organisms that have life. Therefore, they are called living organisms. So biology, talking about, it's a branch of science. That's why they call it biological sciences. It is a branch of science that involves the study of life. Now, the life is the one that is within the living organisms. Is that okay? Now, biology, just like chemistry, it's quite wide. If you look at how many living organisms that we have, are quite a lot. And therefore, the study of this biology, we cannot manage to study everything at a go. So the only way we can start this biology is by looking at the branches that biology has. So we can look at the branches of biology. Biology also has got branches. These branches are the ones that when you go to university to do some courses from the biological sciences, they will ask you to pick on these branches of chemistry. They are the ones that you are going to study as you understand biology. So, how many branches that we have? Branch number one, I'll pick on the one that we already looked at, biochemistry. We talk about this, so it should not be an issue understanding what it is. even the other day we said that biochemistry is a branch, so we are going to call it now here, the branch of science that involves the study of chemical reactions within the living organisms. So saying that biochemistry is is a branch of science that involves the study of chemical reactions that occur within the living organisms. Let me add that occur. So there are a lot of chemical reactions in life. Some chemical reactions can even happen within the atmosphere. Some of these chemical reactions can happen within the rocks, which are non-living organisms. Some of these chemical reactions do happen actually within the living organism. So the branch of science that deals with such kind of study is what we are calling biochemistry. So there are many reactions and they happen in different places. The second one is called entomology. Entomology. This term was a little bit funny when I was growing up. I kept saying it every now and then because it is very simple to remember. So entomology is the branch of biology that involves the study of insects. So there are people who have specialized, and these people are called specialists because they have studied by the branch of biology which is called entomology, and they are called entomologists. These are the human beings that are specialized in the study of insects. And these are the people, when they go on TV trying to explain more about the insects, the insects and such categories, insects can reproduce in such and such a way. These are the ones we are calling the entomologists because they are the ones who have specialized in the study of insects. The third one is called the ecology. Ecology, even in grade 9, is partially introduced because at some point we talk about the environment, we talk about the interaction of animals among themselves, as well as the interaction of the living organisms with the environment. Remember those days they would tell us how important the ecosystem is, because when we cut down a lot of trees, we are depriving animals of the places where to live. So the branch of biology that allows us to start more about the interaction of animals among themselves. Remember, animals don't talk in the way we communicate. So how do animals interact? You can understand that by focusing on ecology. So ecology is the branch of biology or science that involves the study of animal interactions among themselves and with the environment. Yeah, so animals do interact in the very best way that even human beings interact. You'll find that animals who move in groups. When one animal, let me say a buffalo, is attacked by a lion, you find that the buffalo will scream in a particular way. the fellow buffaloes will go there trying to provide support. So they interact among themselves, as well as interacting with the environment. How do they get to know that this direction there are rivers, this direction there's green pasture? It's because of how best they interact with the environment. So the branch of science that deals with that is what we are calling ecology. We are meaning it two. The other one is called botany. Now, botany, when you go to Ridgeway, when you go to Apex, you want to study a medicine, there is a point where you will be allowed to study a little bit about plants. Why? Because most of the medicines that we use to administer to patients, most of the medicines that we give to animals, whatever cure we want to provide, these medicines, most of them are extracted from plants. So therefore, you need to study plants in a detailed way so that you are able to understand the properties that plants have, how can we grow these plants, and so on and so forth. So we are saying that botany is the study, maybe let me cut it short, is a study of plants. So plants also are categorized in many forms, as well as the categories. Yeah, because you will find that these animals also, or these plants rather, have specific features that we need to understand. But also, again, under this botany, when you go in details, that's where we're going to find what is called plant physiology, the makeup of plants, and so on and so forth. So that is the branch of chemistry that deals with that, the branch of biology. Then the other one is called zoology. And from here, we can easily understand it because zoology comes from the word zoo. And what do you find in a zoo? In a zoo, what we find are animals. So this is the study of animals. Though here I have to be a little bit categorical because animals as well as the insects, there are certain similarities that they show, but under this study, we categorize insects in the word here. We also categorize animals in the word here. But the question that one might ask is that why isn't it the human study? Why isn't there the part of biology that studied human beings? Well, we are going to look at that later because at the end of the day, all these things we're talking about how the living organisms are studied. So these are the branches of biology. So we have biochemistry, which was discussed even under chemistry. We have the entomology, the study of insects. We have the ecology, the interaction of living organisms among themselves, as well as living organisms and the environment. We also have the zoology, the study of animals. And we find that under zoology, there are these animals that are even trained. We understand that lions and human beings can never be friends. But the people who are specialized in this area, this field of study, find that they are there to guide the tourists how they can play with animals such as lions and elephants. And these are the ones that are able to guide us as tour guides. They'll tell you, no, when you're in the zoo, don't scream. When you are in the zoo, don't throw litters around. When you are in the zoo, don't eat. Such guides are only provided by the people who have understood the study of animals. So these are the branches of biology. Okay, so having understood the branches of biology, the thing that we have to focus on when we're starting biology, therefore, it is very important that we then look at how can you know that these are living organisms? How can you know that these things I'm given are living organisms? The only way you can know them, the only way you can identify the living organisms is by looking at the properties or the characteristics that they portray. Because, truth be told, the characteristics of a person and the characteristics of crocodiles must be different. Be given the two, you don't know who is a human being and who is a crocodile, but you are just told that crocodiles can swim in water faster than they can move on land. When you just see this organism jumps on water with a long tail, sharp teeth, then you're able to think ni crocodile and things like that. So therefore, we have to look at the characteristics of living organisms. Now, these living organisms, there are certain things that they do that non-living organisms cannot do. And these are the things that are going to make us identify them by. Okay. So, in order to identify the characteristics of living organisms, there is a certain phrase that helps us to understand. So, we're saying that the characteristics of living organisms are abbreviated by what is called Mr. Griff. So Mr. Griff is the best way in which we can remember the properties of living organisms. And these properties are represented by each and every letter that is present in the term Mr. Griff. So the Mr. Griff, how is it helping us to identify? So Mr. Griff can be summarized by that, or can be expanded by that. So the first M on Mr. Griff stands for movement, meaning you as a living organism, you should have the capacity to move from one point to the other without waiting for any force to be applied on you. Stones cannot move on their own unless they are pushed to roll down the hill. Air cannot move on its own unless it is pushed by some forces. So living organisms should have the capacity to move. What about the first R on Mr. Griff talks about production, meaning living organisms should have the capacity to expand in size, should have the capacity to increase in body size permanently, should also have the capacity to multiply in number. Then G stands for growth. Or production is I'll expand it later. Then growth, that's one I was trying to talk about, the permanent increase in body size. Then you should also be able to undergo respiration, and I believe respiration was talked about some time back. When we eat, we're supposed to take the waste products out of our bodies, and that is excretion. So before things are excreted from our bodies, we must be able to eat them. So that's our F, which represents feeding or nutrition. Not on that, when a stone is being crushed, it doesn't feel the pain because they are not very sensitive. So human beings, plants, and animals are able to feel the sensitivity because we are irritable. then we should also have cells. These cells are the ones that enable us to grow. So these few remarks marks the introduction of the characteristics of living organisms. So Mr. Griff is the one that should be able to guide us in a very, 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 very special way. So when you're studying at times, it's important that you hide this part, you just hide it, and then you see if you are able to remember them. You can just hide it like that. And then you start running through one by one to see if you can remember them. C stands for cells. Living organisms have got cells. Maybe let me use a text. Yeah, so C stands for cells. The human beings have cells. Then I stands for irritability or sensitivity. Irritability or sensitivity. Then F stands for feeding. We should be able to feed the little ones. E stands for excretion. Then the other one is R stands for reproduction. Then G stands for growth. We should be able to undergo some growth. Then the other R stands for, you can switch them, doesn't matter, respiration. Okay, then the other one stands for, then M stands for movement. So you should be able to remember this in a very, 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 very easy and systematic way as characteristics of living organisms. And now, with all that said, maybe we can just try to expand these properties in just a little bit. Let's go to these characteristics. Let's try to expand them a little bit. What is movement? When we say living organisms should be able to undergo some movement, what do we mean? So movement, we're talking about the change in position by a living organism. Now, this change in position should not be caused by an external force. We should not be forced to move. There are times we just move on our own. Find that you say like, I think for now, let me go and sit there. Not because where you are, it's bad. Maybe just want to change the position of where you are. So we're talking about the process by which, maybe let me write that way, the process by which living organisms change their position. Their positions without an external force. Change their positions without an external force. That is what we are saying, movement. However, the change, the movement, there are times you are seated at one point and then you are just moving, the head, the hands, maybe you are waving at someone. That is not the movement that we're talking about. We're talking about the entire body moving. So this movement of the entire body is at times called, so the movement of the entire body is called locomotion. It's called locomotion. So the locomotion is a term that is used to talk about the movement of the entire body. The entire body, it's also called the locomotion. So the movement that we talked about under characteristics of living organisms is the change in their position without an external force or an external help. And this movement of the entire body is called locomotion. The other characteristic that we can talk about here is called growth. Called growth. To grow, what does it mean? When you say this person has grown, what do we really mean? So to grow, the growth that we're talking about, there is no growth where a human being or a living organism today grows, tomorrow it reduces. What we are saying as growth is the permanent. Growth is the permanent. Is the permanent increase in size, permanent increase in size, mass, number of cells, and as well as the complexity of a living organism. Growth, we're talking about the permanent change, the permanent change. So when you grow today, we don't expect you to tomorrow to be smaller than the way you were yesterday in terms of the number of cells, in terms of the complexity, in terms of the mass, in terms of the body size, unless you undergo a certain hueness. When you are hue, yeah, there it's understood one can have the loss of mass, one can undergo the loss of number of cells, the complexity, as well as the size of the body. But for as long as you are living a healthy life, that's why when kids are born, they are taken to antenatal so that they are monitored how they are growing, how certain processes are changing in their bodies. So that is the second characteristic we are calling growth. Thirdly, we can talk about excretion. We can talk about excretion. So excretion is a process that's very important in living organisms. And what is it? To excrete. What does it mean? So excretion, by definition, we can say that this is the removal. It's the removal of toxic. This is the removal of toxic metabolic waste, or should I say non-important remains of the food So we're talking about the removal of toxic the removal of toxic metabolic wastes. These things are not important in our bodies. As a result, where are they removed from? They are removed from the cells of the body. Excretion, what does it involve? Going to the toilet is one way of the excretion, because during that process, we remove the unwanted things from our bodies. So examples of waste that we are talking about. So examples of metabolic wastes. This includes one, you can talk about urea from our bodies. Two, you can talk about excess salt. You can talk about excess water. We can talk about the bile pigment. Some of these things, you understand them as we go down. You can also talk about carbon dioxide from our bodies. So these are some of the metabolic wastes that are removed from the bodies during the process called excretion. So excretion is the removal of toxic metabolic wastes from the body cells, and these wastes include urea, they include excess salt, they include excess water. The body needs a certain percentage of water in our bodies. So too much of water, the body itself will undergo regulation, where excess of water is removed, as well as salts. The body also needs some mineral salts, but there are times when the body gets to take more than what it needs. Therefore, the body has to strike a balance between what it has and what it needs. Therefore, excess of it is removed. The bile pigment, you come and understand it later. Carbon dioxide, I believe it is very easy to understand by a grade 10 beginner, because carbon dioxide is taught how it is removed from the body in grade 9 science. Okay, so faith